Touhou is a huge series that pretty much everyone knows about in some way or another. The Touhou Project started first in 1997 with the release of Highly Responsive to Prayers for the PC-98, with now 18 total mainline games and countless side and fan games since its meteoric rise to popularity. There are so many notable things about the series, but one part that sticks out is that the mainline games have pretty much all been produced by one guy, Zun, who does the programming, art, writing, and music for the series. I cannot express enough how impressive that is, especially given that the Touhou games are extremely fun and the music is incredible. Notoriously even, Touhou as a game is overshadowed by the music. Having gone through almost all the mainline game's soundtracks, it's really easy to see why. The sound fonts are consistently interesting, feeling unique from many other game OSTs just by instrumentation alone. But really the standout part is that the rhythms and melodies are just super entertaining and consistently impressive technically. The breadth of ideas here is honestly insane. There are so many different sounds and styles, all done so interestingly. I don't have to preach too much on this bit, I'm sure. Most people are aware of how great Touhou OSTs are, but if you haven't by some chance, definitely give some of them a listen through. I'd recommend the Touhou 8, 11, and 13 soundtracks as a good introduction to the sound of Touhou music, since those games hardly have a bad song between them. Besides the music though, what is so good about Touhou? I think there's a lot to be said about how mechanically solid the games are. There's a solid formula in place, with one or so innovations to the system mechanics per game that change how you get lives usually. Most of these mechanics are pretty fun, although some of them definitely miss. Besides Touhou 10 and 11, I think the foundation of the mechanics is really solid. For me at least, the selling point of these games over other bullet hells is how tight the movement is. Movement speed changes between characters, but generally the playable characters are really fast, which feels really good. By holding down shift, you can focus, which instantly slows you down a ton and focuses your shot spread. Being able to change your movement speed so quickly adds so much control, giving you a bunch of ways to dodge patterns and move around comfortably. It's really addictive once you get the hang of it, and I think it's something that a lot of bullet hells do wrong, opting for the slower style. Along with this, as with many bullet hells, there's a dedicated community committed to routing and clearing the games in tons of different ways, be it runs based around scoring, difficulty, or beating the game without using any resources. The depth of the routing and patterns in each game is dizzyingly large, but really fun to watch and try to emulate. Formulating strategies and patterns of how to dodge, what route to take in collecting items, and where to use bombs is really fun, especially for things like extra stages where you only have a single stage to clear at a time, but at a higher difficulty than normal. The character designs are top-notch as well, despite Zun's admittedly mediocre artistic talents. He comes up with great ideas and outfits for each character, with their personalities all being interesting and goofy in their own ways, making it a lot of fun to get to know them through the games. I'm basically a Touhou art spam bot on Twitter at this point because of how many good character designs the games have and how much good art of them exists. The thing that characterizes Touhou for me in a way very few games do though is that it's a series all about the small moments. When playing the games, there's all these small moments that stick in your head for months later. Maybe there's one track that you put on loop for a week after finding it, which has happened to me a ton of times in the series, such as Yuka's themes in Touhou 4, my theme in Touhou 5, the Stage 1 theme in Touhou 8, you get the point. Something about the melodies just sticks in your head and won't leave until you loop the song a million times. This obsession can be seen just by looking at the fanbase, which almost compulsively creates fan content for the series and stretches into any game you can imagine. There are Touhou mods of everything, from Minecraft to 100% orange juice. Fans of the series are notorious for obsessing over characters who barely get 30 seconds of screen time and maybe a line of dialogue if they're lucky, like Momiji from Touhou 10 and Kookuma from Touhou 6. The least significant feeling of segments can leave the biggest impact on people, which is a serious strength of the games. For the characters that do have dialogue, the conversations are almost notorious also for being really weird and hard to follow, but it also leads to some really fun moments. I'm a big fan of anytime Reimu is aggressive for really no reason, or when Mima acts like a cocky idiot towards everyone she fights. They're really fun to go through as you're playing and add a ton of charm to the world and characters. Bosses also have really unique attacks called spell cards, which are another example of small moments that leave a huge impact. So many of these attacks are so cool, and I always find myself looking back on them for it. Satori Kumeji, from the Stage 4 boss of Touhou 11, has a set of spell cards that live in my head absolutely rent-free for how cool of a concept they are. In that game, you pair up with former enemies to go through the story of the game, eventually fighting Satori, who you learn can read minds. Once you get about halfway through her fight though, she tells you, "This is where it really begins," and actually copies the spell cards of the former enemy you're teaming with, depending on your chosen playable character, which are now used against you. This is such a cool moment because it plays in the character's lore by using their power to have this awesome concept of using old spell cards against you, which ties into older games if you have an appreciation for them. It also adds unique attacks on different playthroughs if you use different characters. This also means that there is another factor to worry about when picking a character to use other than the shots that they use, since you are also worrying about what attacks you have to fight against on this stage. It can lead to some pretty ironic stuff, like one of the best Rainbow Shop types in the game, also having probably the hardest version of these spell cards since she teams up with former extra stage boss Yukari Yakumo, who has some of the seriously most disgusting attacks in the game. It's such a cool moment, despite being only a tiny portion of the game itself, but it's just oozing with character and personality. It would take me hours and hours to go through all the individual moments that stick in my head like this one, such as the cool double boss in Touhou 5 Stage 4, and I've only really played through and beaten about half of the mainline Touhou games. Really, at the end of the day, the thing that makes Touhou so great is that there's soul in every stage, character, boss, and attack pattern. It doesn't always make sense or balance out perfectly, and the lore is hardly comprehensible, but it's still so involving regardless. The sheer charm of every aspect is impossible to dislike. It keeps pulling you in for more. All of these unique tiny bits of fun and personality are something you won't get anywhere else really. In addition to the mechanically tight gameplay, I think a combination of all these factors is what has made this series, developed by a single man over 20 years ago, into this massive franchise that is still so beloved to this day. Thanks for watching, and if by any chance this made you want to play some of the Touhou games, I recommend using the site moriashrine.org, which I'll link in the description below, and trying out some of the games from there. My recommendations for a beginner game would be Touhou 4 on the PC98 series, Touhou 7, or maybe Touhou 6, just because it's so beloved and nostalgic for a lot of people. Either way, hope you liked this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.